You look lonely. I can fix that.
The topic of loneliness is one that is extremely important to me. I believe that it is a core problem of society, and it affects almost everyone. I've already made multiple videos dedicated to talking about being lonely, but I wanted to make another one. I have some new reflections on loneliness that I really want to share because I think they could help you if you struggle with feeling lonely often. I believe that talking about loneliness is the key to solving it for yourself. So I also challenge you to think about how this feeling is a part of your own life. The more you develop this self-understanding, the more at peace you will be with loneliness. I'd love to hear what you have to say about this topic in the comments, so always feel free to share your thoughts down below. That's all I have to say to begin, so let's move on to the first topic. I want to explain a very literal way of looking at loneliness. I think doing this allows us to pinpoint exactly where in our lives we feel the most lonely. First, we need to separate being alone and loneliness. Being alone is a fact. For example, you could be in your room by yourself, or you could be home alone. In these situations, you are alone, but you might not feel a hint of loneliness. You could be doing something to entertain yourself, or simply just enjoying the quiet and calmness. On the other hand, you could be alone and feel lonely. You might hate what it feels like to be isolated, and you dread scenarios where you have to be by yourself. Now, there is also an alternative situation to consider. You could be alone physically, but be connected to someone in a different way. An easy example is being on the phone with someone. You might be in your room alone, but loneliness may be absent because you have that person to talk to. But the opposite could occur as well, and I have a personal example to prove it. Like many people, I usually play video games in my room alone, and while I may be talking to people, my friends even, I still feel lonely sometimes. Moving forward, we now have to consider situations where you are not alone. This could be classified as literally any type of social setting, from hanging out with one friend to a large event. The dualism applies here as well. You could be having the time of your life because you are surrounded by people, or you could feel invisible in the crowd and as a result lonely. The reason I'm bringing up all of these scenarios is because we all react to situations differently. Using myself as an example, I rarely feel lonely in large crowds. It's the smaller social settings, say 15 to 20 people, where I usually experience these feelings. The main point is that in order to understand how to overcome loneliness, you need to identify how this feeling develops within you. Pinpoint what settings cause you to experience loneliness, and then we can begin to look inward and figure out what is really making us feel lonely. In my opinion, thoughts are the most important factor when it comes to feeling lonely. Considering the previous section, the setting you are in may influence you, but it is really your thoughts that contribute the most to feeling alone. Think about a time when you felt lonely. I'm sure you can consider both cases, one where you were actually alone and felt lonely, and another when you were around other people and still felt lonely. What's the common theme among both situations? Your thoughts. You were thinking about the fact that you are lonely. Your mind was telling you that something was missing. If you get into a negative headspace and start thinking about feeling lonely, you will be, and you'll have a tough time getting out. The point I'm making is that we think that the path to solving loneliness is to be around people or just change the situation. That's not true. What we need to instead prioritize is what we are thinking. If we can monitor what is going on in our heads, we will be able to stay relatively at peace no matter the scenario. But this is much easier said than done. I can make a whole video about the journey towards a positive mind, but for now, let me offer a few pieces of advice. In my life, I have found that having a structured morning routine with fulfilling but small activities allows me to establish a clear headspace for the rest of the day. I have also seen on days where I don't follow this routine, I suffer from negative and lonely thoughts more often. When you understand how to best get yourself into a good mindset, you will see that in times where you might feel lonely, you'll have the mental clarity to ask yourself, am I actually missing anything here? What am I really worrying about? Building off of that, it's also about checking in with yourself during the day. Think about your current routine. Is there a specific moment where you often feel lonely? Maybe reflect on how you can change that part of your day, or if you should remove it altogether. The main idea to remember is that loneliness may be affected by what you are experiencing on the outside, but it is most impacted by what you are thinking on the inside. And trust me, I know how hard it is to get yourself out of negative thoughts, which is why I cannot stress enough the importance of developing habits that care for your mind and keep it positive and clear. In this section, I want to look at how loneliness affects us on a macro scale. This part combines how being lonely due to the setting and our thoughts influences our actions. To better explain this, I want to share some examples from the last 4 years of my life. In the past year, I have learned so much about myself and how I am affected by certain things. I know what makes me lonely and what keeps me positive. The problem is, I didn't know anything 4 years ago, and because of this, my life suffered. There were so many things I wanted to do, but didn't get to because I thought I couldn't go alone. I thought that if I went without anyone, I would just feel lonely and the experience would be terrible. I believed that I didn't have the freedom to do what I wanted, and loneliness was the source of my negative mindset. So I challenge you today, mark this moment as when you took back your freedom to try new things regardless of whether you are alone or in a group. Break the stigma of doing things alone. If we practice what I talked about in the previous section, I'm sure we can overcome these fears and enjoy new experiences. For me, I'm going to try to go to a concert this year. Maybe I'll find some people to go with, or I'll go alone. Whatever the case, I'm not going to let my fears of being lonely prevent me from doing something I am interested in. If you do this yourself, you will see that these fears are all just in your head. And you will find that you can do these activities alone and not feel lonely. Again, loneliness originates within you, not because of what's going on outside. You may think that you need to always eat dinner with someone at a restaurant or go to the movies with friends, but that just isn't true. You can do all these things on your own and enjoy yourself. You can be at peace in your solitude. As long as you keep a positive mind and never run away from a new opportunity, you will one day have control over loneliness. Never stop talking about loneliness. Like I said in the beginning, feeling lonely is a widespread phenomenon. Everyone deals with it on a daily basis. Continue talking about it with people, and the more you do, the more understanding you will have over how to fight it. The best way, though, is learning from yourself. Reflect on loneliness in your life and how it influences what you do or don't do in a given day. Learn your triggers and how to prevent them from ruining your momentum. But even when you reach a point of understanding, you may still experience lonely moments, and that's natural. We can't erase this feeling, but we can prevent it from ruining our lives. Today, I hope I helped you on your journey to overcoming loneliness. If you have any suggestions for future video topics, drop them in the comments. As always, this has been Dark Horse, and I will see you in the next video.